Yo! Video games.
What up, dudes, and welcome back to the YoVideogames podcast. I'm Matt.
And I'm Andrew.
And once again, thank you to all our generous patrons who've kept us going for over 300 episodes.
Yeah, if you're interested in becoming a patron at any level, please check out patreon.com/YoVideogames Dude of the week is Superbat. Thank you, Superbat.
Thank you, Superbat.
Long-time dude. And in addition to our beautiful patrons, our handsome patrons, our sexual tyrannosaur patrons, we also have a sponsor for this episode, and it is Manscaped. Now, we're firm believers in taking care of your junk, and they have now launched the Ultra Smooth package, or relaunched it, rather. And I normally I'm not going to put a razor blade on my nuts, but I did it for you guys. I did it for you guys, which is why I'm not going to show you the actual razor, but it's pretty fucking clean looking. It's sort of like that big, easy to hold in the shower.
But the nice thing is,
for you.
I was saying this right before I recorded, if you get the Ultra Performance package, it comes with five replacement blades. So it's not like, you normally you go to a market, you buy a razor blade, and it's like it gives you one, maybe one extra, maybe. And then it's like you got to spend $15-$20 to get another 5-pack. So this is already covered there.
And it
so
comes
that's actually
with
really nice.
It comes with shaving gel, clear groin shaving gel, the crop gel,
and exfoliant. But here's the thing: no one, no matter what you do, if you just go to a normal market, buy any off-brand, name brand, whatever, nothing is there for your junk, right? Like nothing is made specifically to keep your family jewels looking clean and fresh. It's for your face, for your beard. Maybe for your arms and legs if you dive in, on the other side of the aisle.
Full body shaving.
But this right here is specifically made for your crop shaver. That's when you really want to go in low. Because, they have the lawnmower, which is fantastic, which, of course, is really good for trimming and sculpting, if you will, in case you ever wanted to put a bat symbol right above your dick.
I've done an arrow before.
Very good. But yeah, this is if you want that. If you want that like ultra smooth, like I want that like real. I want that. I work in the special industry, special movies. Look,
I want it smooth,
super clean, super clean. And hey, if you're a swimmer and you're just like, I want no resistance in that water, none, not even around the junk. You're definitely gonna want this.
Which is the only reason I use this product, is because I am an elite swimmer. I don't do it for any other reason. Anyway, another thing
it does feel nice. I'm just gonna say that. Hey man, if you're just kind of like, okay, yeah, whatever. Trust me, it actually a smooth, clean, Balzinis. It feels nice. It feels nice.
And then you get to wrap it up in the Boxers 2.0, which are the softest boxers I own. But I kept one in the box just to show you how nice the boxes are.
It's.
If you like Apple products because of unwrapping things, you're going to like how nice the boxes are for this.
You're going to love my nuts.
You're going to love my nuts. But the most important thing about this is it is the perfect Father's Day gift if you're brave.
Absolutely.
I gave the last round of Manscaped stuff that I gave out as gifts, I gave to my father-in-law. He thought that was hilarious. Now, I wasn't brave enough to give him ball shavers or trimmers. I gave him, the cream.
and hey, look, if you're not feeling as ballsy, you could always go, with deodorant, or just general body spray, which comes in there nice.
Body spray is nice.
Eucalyptus-y scent. I've even used it on myself.
It's all the strong scent continuity.
Mm-hmm.
You're gonna smell the same from head to toe, or from tip to taint. It's pretty strong at first, and then once it comes down, it's pretty good. But now is the perfect time to check out manscaped.com and use our code YoVG, all caps, for 20% off and free shipping worldwide. That's manscaped.com, code YoVG, all caps, 20% off, free shipping worldwide. Get yourself an ultra smooth package.
Damn right.
So this week we're thinking a little retro. We're going a little retro.
Yeah, well, I mean, because the thing is like we've been kind of, like on the up and coming, like news as it drops, whatever.
It's time for an evergreen.
Time for an evergreen. I mean, we could talk about, Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2 got a release date, which Andrew won't even buy. Neither will I.
I will not. I'm not going to buy it. But
yeah. So, but I thought, okay. So earlier this week, or actually I don't know the exact day it came out, but whatever. There's a really fun article that came out from MDShock.com. They do a lot of retro Sega stuff.
I'm still sort of shocked that there is an entire website named after the Mega Drive.
Yeah. This was published. Okay, we were gone when this was published. It was published on May 29th, but it's an older article from the Nikkei newspaper in Japan. And it's an article from February 29th, 1996. And I thought it was a fascinating time capsule, if you will, into the state of the game industry at that period in time. So we're talking, like early February, leap year, I guess. It's just 96 is just getting going. So it's really a look back at the year of 1995. And there was a lot of fear that the video game industry was kind of heading into a crash. Now, I did not remember any fear, but it does bring up some interesting points. And this is what I didn't see just being, a young enthusiast video gamer back then. And that is, but a lot of it makes sense, is how poorly most game companies did in 1995. And people are like, what's so significant about 1995? And that was a big transition year. That was the year we moved from 16-bit to 32-bit. It is the year we moved from 2D to 3D. It is the transitional period, which will be the last time probably gaming will ever have such a radical jump where 3D polygons like could not be done on 16-bit hardware. You could argue, well, Star Fox was kind of doing that with the Super FX2 chip or Super FX1 chip, or the SVP.
But that
chip.
was an effect, right? That wasn't true.
It kind of was, yes and no. I mean, like it wouldn't be possible without the added hardware. They had to build hardware into the cartridge. So
that's crazy.
Yeah. And then Sega did it once with Virtua Racing, but it was $100. So it was this really rough transitional period, and I don't know. I thought it would be fun, I guess, for us, since we were there, to sort of reflect back on what was going on at the time. But I thought, before we get into that, let's talk about so what was significant about this? And that is in the fiscal period ending March 1995, so March 30th, 1995, April 1st to March 30th, 95. Konami took an extraordinary loss of 11.6 billion yen, so $116 million. Should I convert the yen or should I just say the yen?
I would just say the yen, but
okay.
I guess the rough conversion would be 1 to 10? No, 1 to 100.
Yeah. They basically don't have sense.
Yeah.
So in 95, Konami took an extraordinary loss of 11.6 billion yen due to clearing out its unsold inventory. During the same period, Capcom took a loss of 7.5 billion yen after writing down the value of its American subsidiary.
Oof.
And in the mid-year period ending in September 95, Nintendo also took a loss of 9.8 billion yen after doing the same with its American subsidiary. This fiscal year, Sega, and this is 95, by the way, Sega is taking an extraordinary loss of 26 billion yen due to the downsizing of its American and European subsidiaries and due to disposal of unsold inventory. So this is really interesting because, again, this is coming from a Japanese newspaper kind of looking at the West and wondering what's going on or whatever. One of the things they really cite was that and this is bold, but Japan was basically saying that they're giving away too many free games with the console.
Well, that's been a complaint forever, and it stayed a complaint, right?
Yeah,
which is why they don't do it anymore.
Seeing 2 to 3 free games included with the consoles become common. There were even stores in Europe that included 10 free games. Hudson, which is TurboGrafx, they established a branch office in London in the hopes of expanding more into Europe, postponed the expansion with the statement. Based on the conditions of the market, there's just no way for a software company to make a profit. Yeah, and the downsizing is pretty crazy. Sega reduced personnel in Europe from 480 people in 93 to 120 people now. 480 to 120. North America
Oof.
from 900 people in 93 to just 350 now. Yeah, and Sega reorganized branches in Netherlands, Belgium, Austria, and switched over to a proxy system. Our business scale will shrink, but our losses will also be reduced. Sega President Hayao Nakanama announced that at the beginning of the year, we are planning to increase our arcade game division by a factor of 3 to a revenue scale of 350 billion yen. The plan is to greatly increase the relatively stable income of the arcade division in order to absorb the risk of the home console division.
It's sort of odd because I guess arcades really died in what, 2003? 2005? Maybe?
Yeah.
They
03. Yeah, about 03 was when it pretty much was like. Well, they were already dying in America before that, but like that was it. Like 2003 kind of rolled around, and I'm like, it's done.
Yeah, and you still
it's
had like Castle Park that had its arcade. You had arcades like that were like side dishes to whatever the fuck else was going on. But like you didn't have nearly as many bless you. You didn't have nearly as many just pure arcades. You didn't have your tilts or your family funds or by probably what, 2005? I mean, Family Fun stayed around for a good long time, but
for a little bit because it was just sort of like a mecca or
Yeah.
just like it was just such a pure fighting game hub for so many. And I actually really lamented that fact because like I remember when my early young adult years, it was great. We'd just go to Family Fun, Max and me, and I'd go buy like a box of Mike and Ike's, and I just sit at the Keyboard Mania and play that, for a little bit if things were too busy on other stuff.
You had to go to the pizza cookery and you get yourself your, pizza and your salad and you eat that shit. And then you fuel up on that. And then you go do like a several hour marathon at Family Fun.
Yeah, you got to wonder if like all the food businesses near it really suffered when they died out. I mean, it's hard to say.
Yeah, one or the other. Either Family Fun started to suffer once like Pizza Cookery went out, or Pizza Cookery really suffered and went out when Family Fun started lagging. But the Family Fun only closed because the guy got cancer, right?
Well, he did, but there was a well. This is getting into like some
Weeds, I guess.
deep lore shit, but
Yeah.
I don't know how much I want to say about this, just because like basically, let's just say there were some neighbors unhappy with it, and the city of LA itself kind of stopped giving licenses out to arcades a long time ago, because they thought it was just sort of like a magnet for
The hoodlums,
crime and drugs. Yeah. We could read between the lines there, but yeah, there's more to the story. There's definitely some pushback from let's just call it local neighborhoods for now.
Okay, well, that sucks. Fuck those people. Anyway, the point is that 1995 here was kind of like the beginning of the end for Sega's hardware on both fronts, really. Like, it stuck around for another 6-7 years, but the Dreamcast came out in what, 2000 or 2001?
99.
Or it came out
in North America.
Yeah, so it came out
98 in Japan.
Yeah, so it really kind of like limped after this.
Yeah, and I think I for me, I'm like I talked about this on Twitter a little bit, but I remember 95. I kind of remember that time frame because there was new consoles, and I think another thing to sort of like, okay, if you're too young or you weren't even come yet in 95, for our younger listeners, there was a lot of game systems on the market in 95. You could walk into a game store, and they existed, mom and pop game shop. I mean, not like an EB Game or a GameStop. I mean like a real mom and pop game store. You could walk into a game store and there would be for sale games for all these different systems. Some of them were already out, like kind of like done, no more games. Like, but then a lot of them were still getting games in 95. there were no more Nintendo games being made, but it's only been 95 was only a year after the last Nintendo game, right? So you had Nintendo, Super Nintendo, Game Boy. There was Master. You didn't really find Master System, but there was Sega Genesis, Sega CD, Sega 32X. There was Atari Jaguar, Jaguar CD, 3DO, CDI, Neo Geo CD, which they were trying to push in '95. There was Sony PlayStation on the horizon, Sega Saturn.
This is mind-boggling.
N64 was like pushing that. There was TurboGrafx, weren't even games being made, but there was still that TurboGrafx CD. So there were a lot. There were so many damn game systems generally on the market, and again, like even if you cut that down to like there was Super Nintendo, there was Sega Genesis, there was Sony PlayStation, there was Sega Saturn, there was 3DO, there was Atari Jaguar, Jaguar CD. Just that alone, not to mention the Virtual Boy as well in '95, which I somehow missed that as well. So a Virtual Boy came out in '95, and Nintendo pumped that for about 6 months and gave up on it. So, '95 was a real fucky year for gaming, and it's kind of interesting to me to look back and read this article and talk about how like basically software was not selling in '95.
It sounds like they flooded the market, though.
Yeah, and that, which is funny because there's an actual quote here. The market has been flooded with low-quality software, said Nintendo president Hiroshi Yamauchi. Consumers in North America who want to buy 16-bit games are rapidly disappearing. Sega side was it. It's true that 16-bit consoles sold quite well, and we were able to sell off a good portion of our inventory, but the games did not sell at all, said Sega director Shunichi Nakamura. The best-selling game charts for the past few weeks in North America, which is few weeks is January, February of '96, reveal that almost all of the top titles are for Sony's PlayStation console. Games for this the SNES console, which has sold over 30 million units, far more than PlayStation, have disappeared from the best-selling charts.
So was PlayStation just that good at
No,
marketing?
and I don't even. Well, here's the thing: it's like they weren't even selling that much. I think it's saying like, oh god, PlayStation dominating the charts. I'm like, I don't think the charts, the number of games being sold wasn't really actually even that high. And again, everything is like so spread out, in early '96, from all these different consoles I just listed,
Yeah.
Through large scale mass production, Sega's been able to reduce the manufacturing cost of its 16-bit console to the point we aren't losing on production. However, we can't earn a profit because the software, the most essential part, is just not selling. Which makes sense as to why Sega was dumping out. Here's the 32X. Here's the Sega Saturn. Here's a Sega CD if you want it.
Does anybody want any of this? Nothing? No? All right, cool.
No, Game Gear? I forgot Game Gear. I listed all those consoles and I forgot Game Gear. That was there too. Its last game came out in '97. Yeah, that was the Nomad.
Fair, yeah, the Nomad. I wonder if we're ever going to have a time again where there's more competitors. Like, is Sega ever going to be like, we're getting back into the hardware game, boys?
No, they'll never do that again.
Well, I don't think they have the infrastructure to do it anymore. But
no, but I mean, like, I think they wouldn't even if they did, just because again, like, consoles are, you don't make money on the consoles. You got to make money off the software, and so like you have to manufacture this expensive piece of technology at all and sell it most like at a loss or close to a loss. So that's the real problem there. And and like unless someone's buying digitally makes things different though, which is why I still think it's like I still think Sega has, you could make I don't know what you call it, Dreamcast 2, Dreamcast Mini, whatever. You could just make a little mini Sega console that's just a fucking Raspberry Pi, right?
Oh yeah,
just a little tiny emulator box, and have a slot for micro SD cards, and you could just have your own little mini eShop, digital only, and Sega could just pump money into this thing. And if this thing had like 4 USB slots on it, for 4-player games and whatever, and if it could go online, which again, none of this going online with old Dreamcast, Sega Saturn titles, not hard to do. Sega could make money off this thing. I think just selling a one and done box top with like the mini Genesis and the mini SNES, that's great and all, but whatever. I'm like, I would absolutely permanently keep plugged in of a little mini Sega box that went online, could play online, and you could download, classic games. And I'm not talking about Genesis, but Saturn and Dreamcast specifically. People
Yeah,
go
that'd
ape
be
shit,
epic. Yeah, and you could
Yeah,
make it look cool really easily.
and you could get Capcom on board. You could just sell like a really good version of Marvel 2 on there. It's easy money. Like, it's not easy money because you have to get with Marvel 2 because Marvel's involved. But like,
and you have to do all the tooling to get it made, and it's still a product. You still have to do all that bullshit, but still,
yeah,
I mean,
I think there's a market for like, a retro style, but constantly updated retro system. But
I would agree with that.
mhm.
So there's an interesting thing here that they reference, where they talk about the Atari Shock, the 1982 Atari Shock. And that
Yeah.
happened 13 years before the 1995 shock that they're talking about here.
Yeah. Well, they call it it's the video game crash of '83. So I don't know what they're talking about '82 unless they're because you know how like fiscal years kind of don't always line up
Yeah,
100%.
I
But yeah,
so,
it's over a decade. Let's put it that way.
so I wonder if this is like is this a trend? Because games haven't been around long enough as a medium to really decide what a trend is. But like every 10
Mhm.
years or so, do you see kind of a shock? Did we have one of those in 2009, 2010?
No. There was a period. Where things were starting to slump a little at the end of the 360 PS3, and it people were wondering if we were kind of maybe slipping into one, but then it bounced back really pretty good after the PS4 and Xbox One launched, and the answer was very simple: you held on to the 360 and PS3 too long.
Oh, I guess, yeah.
People just got bored. Um, so
They got bored of
that
the hardware, or they got bored of the games.
I probably both.
How long was the 360 generation in
It
total?
was long. It was particularly long because it came out in 2005, and the Xbox One came out in like 2013. It was like an 8-year cycle.
I owned three 360s.
Mm-hmm.
One renewal because it died.
Yeah.
The second one that I got just because it had a bigger hard drive.
Mm.
So I owned three, but only one of them. So I bought two. I owned three.
Yeah.
I think my brother owned like four because he bought the special edition Gears one or something like that.
Yeah. There definitely came a point though where like they needed a hardware refresh.
Oh, absolutely.
Like, things weren't exciting any longer.
I think one thing that I sort of think about this occasionally. Do they still make like console accessories? Remember how the 360 had like you could get better fans, you could get stands
to
and
get
shit
on the
like
back.
that. Yeah,
Switch definitely gets a bunch of that shit because of the nature of the Joy-Cons, and people sell special docks and crap like that.
but you're not going to see that for PS5. The thing's a fucking behemoth.
I think they
You're going to
maybe
strap like a little camelback to it for
I
liquid
don't know.
cooling.
I don't know if they sell keyboards, attachments. It's got the attachment thing on the bottom here for maybe one. I hate this controller.
I wish they would do a keyboard. That was my favorite accessory to the 360, the little keyboard that clipped onto
Yeah.
the bottom.
This controller can eat my fucking asshole, by the way. Like, it was
Which
giving
is
me
now going to be
pain
shaved clean.
the other night playing multiverses, and I've got massive drift on the right analog stick. And I got massive drift like 6 months into this console. I fucking hate this controller.
But there's a cool purple color now.
I need to get and I have to get a new one because there are PS5 games that just will not let you play unless you're playing on this big ugly piece of shit.
Can't wait. I thought you could do keyboard mouse if you wanted to on PS5.
I think you can. Pretty sure you can.
Get to it, man. Be elite.
No.
Ultimate D-pad is the fucking arrows keys.
Cheaters. Man. Cheating.
So another thing that they basically show here is an aggressive price war. So Sega was basically trying to overtake Nintendo in the United States.
Yeah, and they
At
did
the
for a
start.
little while.
But
They did.
the way they did it is they sacrificed profit for growth. And then,
Yeah,
of course,
well.
they hit a crash. And guess what's happening in tech today?
The thing is, though,
Okay.
it's like Nintendo had an over 90% share of the game market. You weren't going to like suddenly do that by being more expensive than them. You know, by being the up and comer and being more expensive. Like
No.
I get what they did what they needed to do. I mean, honestly, like it wasn't to me, and like it's not really the fact that Sega cheapened themselves out and they crashed. To me, it's more the fact that it's like they diluted the market. Okay, like they got the Genesis to beat the Super NES. And what did they do with that, newfound success? Here's a Sega CD, and then here's a 32X. It's like,
Why are
no,
you doing this to me?
you should have stuck the course is what you should have done. Like or like something like I would say maybe make the CDX more of a thing, but the CDX was like $400. Yeah,
But there has to be like other reasons why the games weren't selling besides it being flooded. I mean, they
well,
had like
95.
shitloads of
Okay,
games.
well, here's the other thing though. 95 we're talking about here. The Genesis had been around for 7 years.
Oh, so fatigue was already setting in
Like
on.
someone made a really good point too, where it was kind of like there was a malaise. I think it was put. Someone was talking about this online, and it's kind of true because this is after Street Fighter 2. This is after Super Street Fighter 2. This is after Mortal Kombat 1 and 2. This is Mortal Kombat 3, right? And 3 was popular, yes, but it wasn't as popular as Mortal Kombat 2 was. So like people were getting really fucking tired of waiting for a new Street Fighter rather than another iteration of Street Fighter 2. Like there was sort of just it felt like butter scraped over too much bread, just like 95 was an interesting year.
Well, that and they had so many different consoles, but they
Yeah.
released what 20 games for the Genesis
Sega, yeah, well,
that
yeah,
year.
yeah, and it was 95 is a weird year because I think Vector Man was probably their biggest success in 95 for Genesis.
Over Fantasy Star 4, really?
Yeah, well, there's an interesting story behind Phantasy Star 4 where Working Designs was actually trying to get the rights to, because it actually had been out in Japan for some time, and Sega was not committed to bringing it out in North America at all. And
Wow, sounds
they
familiar.
they basically were like begging. They were like Working Designs was like trying to get the rights to it, and then Sega was like, no one's gonna buy this. And Working Design says yes, they would. We could sell it at a premium and people would buy it and be like, Sega literally went, ha ha, okay. And so they released it at $90
Oh,
in North America, and it actually still hit some it still hit their expectations. So it was kind of like a what the fuck, kind of like there's a weird story there basically about how Sega basically like wanted to prove that RPGs weren't a thing to Working Design, so they overcharged for their Phantasy Star 4 release, and it still sold a little bit,
$90 in 90s money?
And that's the thing I wanted to talk about too, because I remember this. I remember being in KB Toys in 95, and the Super NES games, like the big ones, like Killer Instinct, if you saw Final Fantasy 3 or Chrono Trigger on the show, they were $80, they were $90. Like even Street Fighter 2 Turbo was, or Super Street Fighter 2 was like an $80 or a $75 game.
God
And
damn.
they sat there on the shelves for months and months and months on end, and they collected dust. And part of this is due to the both precedent and the licensing fees, because cartridges were very expensive to manufacture. Cartridges are still expensive to manufacture. And Nintendo had this draconian fucking policy about licensing fees and costs to put a Super NES game out. And lo and behold, when you got to a point where these systems were now old, this stuff was old hat, and it wasn't like hot new 3D shit, people weren't dropping the prices because that would just be way too much of a loss. You might as well have given the game away, kind of deal. And then Sega kind of followed along a little bit too, where like they had better licensing fees, but at the same time, Sega didn't want to seen as undervalued, right? They didn't want to be seen as like our games are less
Cheaper,
good
yeah.
because they're cheaper. So yes, they had these like 90, 80, $90, releases like Phantasy Star 4. So they kind of dug their own grave in sort of a way there. And then when the CD games were coming out on PlayStation, they were still charging a whole lot of money. Here's the thing: in the '90s, there was no standard pricing for video games. Sony kind of actually did that themselves, where they set a standardized price about a year or two into the PlayStation's life, where they said standard pricing is $50 for new games for PlayStation, and Nintendo had to basically counter that and set their standard pricing for $60 on N64 games, because again, there was cartridges because they're fucking stubborn.
Yeah, but I wonder why cartridges are so much more expensive.
Well, I mean, it's literally like all the molding and whatever, and the way Nintendo does it is like they own the keys to the
Oh,
to the manufacturing. It's like you can't. They used to have there's a whole history behind like the 10-pin chip on NES games where like it's not even just that the cartridge mold, it's the fact that they would actually you had to pay them a licensing fee, and then they would on every game manufactured put like a lockout chip in the cartridge motherboard, um and then people would work ways around it. Even Sega did that too, but there's a whole other fucking great story about how Sega wanted to become, or I'm sorry, EA wanted to become a Sega publisher, and Sega was like, like EA was like, we want to make Sega Genesis games, we want to do it for this much money. And Sega was like, well, that's cheaper, that's cheaper than what we give everyone else. And they're like, by the way, we've cracked your code, so we're gonna just start releasing cartridges that work on Sega Genesis with or without your approval. And Sega went, okay, you're approved.
yeah, I guess so. The ball's on them. EA always dicks.
Yeah, so
Extreme assholes. That's what EA stands for.
yeah, extreme assholes. Yeah, and when it came to manufacturing, like cartridges did cost money. There was a whole manufacturing and licensing fee behind them. But when it came to the CDs, they were still upcharging them because you get to this point where it's like, well, a Sega CD version of a Genesis game will be by proxy a little bit better. It'll have CD quality music. It might have FMVs, but the CD costs nothing to manufacture. So shouldn't it be cheaper? No, God, no. That's devaluing it. So the Sega CD version might be as much or more than the Genesis version, even though it costs less to produce. So again, these people kind of built their own graves. You kind of see where this was happening there. But yeah, I don't know, because I was gonna say, I don't know. Do you remember that era where like 16-bit was kind of on its way out, like PlayStation existed but it hadn't taken off yet?
The thing is, I mean, and I was really young. I was 7 at the time of this happening. But you got to remember, like, all of the news that I had access to was like, you're reading fucking Nintendo Power, the greatest marketing scheme ever.
And they're telling everybody to wait for the N64.
Yeah.
It's gonna be great. It's gonna be great. It's gonna be.
I mean, it's hard to imagine now where you have access to every opinion for all the worst things that does. But because of that, like, you get to see so much more information, like real information about the industry compared to in the 90s, where like even this article leaves out all the other fuckery, and you're the one who said this to me, all the other fuckery that Sega was getting up to. It makes it seem like all of Sega's woes is because America, for some reason, sucks at buying games. But like, there's all sorts of weird shit. How many years after this did they sell their arcade division? Like, who did they sell it to? They sold it to a Korean company, right?
Or something like that. Was recently,
Sammy,
actually. Well, they merged with Sammy in 2003.
That's right. It was a merger, but still, they like that was the beginning of the end of arcades. Was about 2003. Like that was about where it started to really go downhill. So it's like there's all sorts of shady, terrible practices that Sega had. But you're right. Americans didn't buy software, and so we're the assholes.
Yeah, we're the assholes. You're the ones who had 4 fucking systems of your own on the market in 95.
Yeah, like who competes with themselves like that? What the fuck?
Genesis, Sega CD 32X, Saturn.
That's amazing.
And Game Gear, if you really want to get pedantic with the portable stuff.
That's incredible. I like how this ends, where it says, by cleansing itself through the extraordinary loss, Sega's overseas console division will be starting over from zero. Sega's policy now is to focus on establishing the Saturn and also on expanding into PC game software in the North American market. Quote from Nakayama, the question now is how much our profits from the arcade market will be able to turn around the console market. Well, okay. I guess they must have done a fair job because it kept it afloat long enough to launch another system.
Not really, though.
Well, they lived long enough to drown later.
There was millions of dollars from Nakayama's personal fortune that he pumped into the company to keep it afloat. Like not even 5 years after this article.
That's rough.
Just to keep the lights on. And they dumped $75 million into developing Shenmue.
Oh shit!
It was a flop.
But no, it's the greatest game ever made. The reason that I quoted that ending though is like going back to how much was I aware of this? Like again, I'm reading the.
Here's the thing: I wasn't aware of the financial of this. Really, I didn't think about it until this article came out. Yeah,
but like the thing is like think about. We were essentially reading nothing but promotional material, and that was the main. And we were quote unquote informed gamers. But look at the bias inherent to this Japanese article, which like it's an article. But like they're very clearly trying to frame this as like it's just a happenstance occurrence. No one could have foreseen what's going on here. Okay, I guess. Like, whereas if you got an article today, or even just a video, someone would be pointing out all the dots, right? That would be just like, I mean, they'd probably be shitting all over Sega, which, fine. I'm not saying that like you don't have to have an article that does nothing but shit on Sega, but like, there's clearly a bunch of stuff they actively avoided mentioning.
Yes. And here's another whole other aspect.
So I didn't know shit back then.
Yeah, of 95, 96. Do you remember the sort of how we were, as I said, on Twitter, I was like, we were all drunk on Kool-Aid of 3D technology. We're like, we didn't care about really good looking 2D games that were coming out at the time. We wanted that 3D. We wanted 3D was it. Like we needed that 3D. We wanted these low poly, low resolution, ugly as fuck like 3D games. Like games being in 3D was such a revelation, and we were all fucking hyped on this shit.
I was 100% on that. I was a giant Sony fanboy. Like I was my brother was all Nintendo Power and Nintendo, and I was all PSM and PlayStation, and like I mean just balls to the wall fanboyed hard for it. Even though the controller sucked.
I remember, yes. I remember the first PlayStation game I played, but do you remember the first PlayStation game you liked? That you played on PlayStation, were like, yeah, this is great. Or just enjoyed to some extent. And I actually do remember this. First PlayStation game I ever played was Extreme Games, ESPN Extreme Games, which was a launch game. It's basically like Road Rash on rollerblades and skateboards and whatever.
I mean,
but and that game sucked. I remember thinking this is nothing special. But the first game I enjoyed, like actually honest to God enjoyed on PlayStation, was Jumping Flash.
Jumping Flash.
Yeah, do you remember Jumping Flash? Probably not.
I don't, no.
It's a first-person platformer. You play as this robot bunny.
That sounds
you
awful.
move around 3D environments and you jump. But it was clean. It was crisp. It ran well. I remember thinking like, this is cool. I don't really get it. I'm not really like, it was a little abstract with its graphics and stuff, but like, obviously like Mario 64 came out and that was like a revelation. But like,
all about Blasto, boys.
Blasto was later though.
Blasto is the first and only game you needed on the PlayStation. It was the greatest. It had platforming, it had action, it had comedy. It had Phil Hartman.
It did have Phil Hartman. I mean,
it had all the
probably
things
the only
to make it a banger.
The only positive thing I can say about Blasto is the Phil Hartman aspect.
The thing is that like a lot of the early games that I like have vivid memories of are games that I played more than once, and that would be like Metal Gear Solid, Siphon Filter. I'm trying to think off the top of my head.
After 97, I think PlayStation really kind of took off in 97. Maybe you could argue end of 96 when Crash 1 came out. But
Crash 1 was one of the first games that I ever got on the PlayStation. So maybe I didn't get a PlayStation until 96.
I mean, that makes sense because again, like PlayStation came out in fall of 95 and there wasn't much on it besides Warhawk. As far as like really big games. And I do remember Warhawk playing that after Jumping Clash and being like, oh my god.
Well, because another thing that happened is that our PlayStation ended up collecting dust because we ended up going back and playing a shitload of N64 because there were a lot of games that were coming out that we wanted. But most important, beyond like a lot of games coming out, the rental place across the street, the video rental place, they only carried for like that entire year. They only carried N64 games. And like we couldn't afford to buy the games one place. So we'd like once a week we'd get to rent a game. It was like $5 for the weekend or something like that. It's fucking great. I think we played the first time we played Banjo-Kazooie was a rental, and then we had to buy it because we loved it. But yeah, so that it's entirely possible that our PlayStation collected dust again until Final Fantasy VII, which was what, 97?
Yeah, August of 97.
Yeah, so we got it in 96. There was a bunch of games we played for it. But then I remember the first time that it became like hooked up and stayed hooked up for like a long time was probably for Final Fantasy VII.
Yeah, and
70 hours of gameplay.
I think if anything, the moral of this story was the game industry bounced back just fine, but yeah, 95 was a malaise of a year for gaming, which isn't to say anything about the quality of the games that came out that year, because some absolute classics, stone cold classics, came out in 95, but people were not buying it. There were games that people like that came out that year that I don't know how you feel about it, but like Chrono Trigger came out 95.
We didn't own that until
nobody owned it. It was one of the greatest games of all time. Earthbound came out in 95. Nobody cared about that game then. Nobody cares about it now. Pitchforks, whatever.
The game that we got with PS1 was Tekken 2.
Ugh.
We got Tekken 2. Yeah, well, I mean, we didn't really get a whole lot into Tekken, I'll be honest with you. We were big Mortal Kombat boys. But yeah, we had that. I think we got Time Crisis.
The gun game? Like
yeah,
with the light gun?
Yeah, I think it can't because we got 2 orange guns.
Nice.
And there was we used those orange guns, I think, for another game that came out way later, and it might have even been on PS2. I think it was Vampire Knight. Maybe?
That's a PS2 light gun game, yeah.
Yeah, so I think we already had the guns when we got that.
I don't think the GunCon 1 worked on PS2 though.
Then I guess we had multiple because wasn't the PS1 GunCons, they were like bright orange and looked like revolvers. Am I picturing the right GunCon, or am I picturing
GunCon 2 is orange?
Oh, so
GunCon
maybe
1 is gray.
Maybe we only had 2 of the GunCon 2s, but we had Time Crisis. Maybe I'm just misremembering getting a GunCon. But again, I was 7, so yeah, I don't know. I know there was a Star Wars game that we had gotten in 1995, or we rented in 1995. But I don't remember.
For PlayStation?
Yeah, for PlayStation. I don't remember anything
probably
about
like probably Dark Forces, probably.
Probably. But like I don't remember playing a ton.
Or what was that? What was that Rebel? There was like some. It was not Rogue Squadron. It was like Rebel something. There was like I think that might have only been on Sega CD and PC. Wow, man. There's a lot of like just kind of like dank Star Wars games that are kind of like forgotten at times. Star Wars Chess on Sega CD, and
Well, I'm gonna.
God, there was some Rebel FMV game where like you play as a Rebel pilot, and it wasn't X-wing versus Tie Fighter or X-wing or Tie Fighter. It was there were two of them, Rebel Alliance or Rebel.
We bought Area 51 because we had the gun con, and we never played it. I just found that this weekend cleaning out my parents. I found it still in its saran wrap. We never played Area 51 outside of the arcade. That was a
Yeah,
95 though. That was, and oh my god, there was a Batman Forever game, which I feel like we probably owned. But I don't remember playing it.
oh, Batman. Wait, I think it was Rebel Assault. Yeah, Rebel Assault 1 and 2. I don't know if it came out on PlayStation, but yeah.
It was Dark Forces that I'm remembering.
Yeah, sounds about right.
And then there was a tactics game, but I don't know. We had games for it in '95, and I might be remembering that we played them because we rented a lot of games when we were kids. Like we couldn't get.
Yeah, and that's like something I think a lot of people don't probably. They're gonna grow up and not really know what it was like to have most of your library just be based around whatever you could rent, at the time.
Yeah, I mean, like the way I got Conker's Bad Fur Day, which was one of my favorite games growing up, was I rented it. I rented Cruisin' USA from, I rented Conker's Bad Fur Day from Blockbuster, and someone had swapped the cartridge, and so it was Cruisin' USA. And so I went in and complained, and the guy gave me, like, he swapped it out, but he didn't check it out to me. So when I came back to give it, they just didn't have a record of it, and I basically just got to keep it.
You terrible man.
Yeah, well, Blockbuster wasn't run well, okay? I can't help that. I brought it back, and the guy was like, we didn't rent this out to you. I was like, oh, my mistake. Like, what? Like, what do you... what the fuck am I supposed to do?
And that's so much later, though. Like, it's kind of crazy to think about that. Conquer didn't come out till 2001, like April
I know.
2001.
And the thing is like this N64 had some staying power.
It did, but then like okay, it had staying power, yes, for people playing it, but like it was dead by 2001. Like we were waiting for the GameCube to come out because like there were like no more games really coming out for the system throughout most of 2001. There was like Conquer and Paper Mario, and then you just waited. You got the Game Boy Advance in June, and then you got the GameCube in November.
Oh yeah, okay. So '96 is where PlayStation started to fuck for me. You had Resident Evil,
yeah,
Tomb Raider, Crash Bandicoot, Legacy of Kain, Blood Omen, Legacy of Kain.
Yeah,
Duke Nukem, big one for me. Played the shit out of Duke Nukem. I didn't play Command and Conquer, but it was a big one. And I didn't play Diablo. You'd think I would have got Diablo.
Yeah.
But I didn't. I didn't end up playing Diablo until I got a PC. And then, of course, it had Metal Slug on it, and I was all about that shit.
Yeah. So, like, yeah, because, like, I think by 96, like, things had transitioned to next gen.
Yeah, look at
that
that.
point.
96 has just, like, great shit. I'm going to look up 97 now. Yeah, God.
Well, 97 has amazing stuff as well. 97 is you have GoldenEye, Final Fantasy 7,
Symphony of the Night,
Symphony of the Night, Star Fox 64,
Crash Bandicoot 2, Mortal
Diddy
Kombat
Kong Racing.
4. Yeah,
97 is a big year too. But yeah, it is kind of funny to think back to 95 in particular, and it's like the big games for Nintendo in 95 were Earthbound, Chrono Trigger, Killer Instinct on Super NES, Yoshi's Island, and Donkey Kong Country 2. And KI sold well, and Donkey Kong Country 2 probably sold decent. Probably nowhere near as good as one. Actually, I should look that up because I can. But yeah, like Yoshi's Island probably did okay as well.
Yeah, this is where I became a Sony fanboy because it not only I liked the game 1, it wasn't a good game, but I liked it. Final Fantasy Tactics, the first Madden I ever played. Not that I was a huge fan of Madden, but still, I was a Blitz boy. But Madden was on there, and it was the serious football game.
Mm-hmm.
You also had a Ghost in the Shell game that came out that year. Oh my God.
The Ghost of the Shell game was made by the Jumping Flash people, which makes sense if you play both.
Yeah, is that why they say like Mirror's Edge was a callback to those games? Is that why I remember Jumping Flash? Like I recall the name, but I don't remember.
That checks out, honestly.
That's the only thing I can think of. 1998, you had Metal Gear. Dude, PlayStation 1 fucked. Metal Gear Solid. You had another Crash Bandicoot, Xenogears, which I don't
long
give a fuck
said
about.
1998 is one of the greatest years in gaming history.
Tomb Raider 3, another odds with Parasite Eve. Ooh. Brave Fencer Musashi, which, if you were into that. Tenchu.
Brave Fencer was good, but I don't think it sold a shit ton. It only sold anything because it had a demo for Final Fantasy VIII.
Yeah, most of this is rentals. Like, we owned Parasite Eve, we owned Metal Gear Solid. We didn't own the new Crash Bandicoot. We didn't own Tomb Raider, but we rented those. We rented Gex. But we rented it.
So did I.
So did R4, Ridge Racer 4, Type 4. Ooh, I just found that there was like 2 discs in that. Twisted Metal, which I'd never bought, but I can't
remember why.
I can't remember why either. Rainbow Six. Ooh. And then of course
Rainbow Six was much better on N64 than on PlayStation.
Then of course you shut your whorish mouth. And then of course
much better.
Well,
Rainbow Six
had it
on N64
on
was the game that, and the reviews will reflect it, but like on the N64 it was one of the first games I played with co-op, and I kind of realized how much more I enjoyed first-person co-op than multiplayer, and it was because of Rainbow Six on N64.
1998 was when Blasto came out. It's also when PlayStation had their Cool Borders 3 come out, which was the competition to 1080, wasn't it? Wasn't that around that time?
Well, I mean, I think 1080 was more a competition to Cool Borders, but like Cool Borders 3 was, oh god, my brother played the demo for Cool Borders 3 like non-fucking stop. And it was good though. I mean, you can't really blame him. Yeah, I'm looking at like the sales list. It's like, yeah, Donkey Kong Country 2 absolutely sold well, 5 million copies. Yoshi Island sold 4 million. Killer Instinct sold 3.2.
Dude, I'm having a blast right now because now I'm on 1999. You had Crash Team Racing, which I liked, even though we all know that Mario Kart was better. Final Fantasy VIII.
Not 64.
Say what?
Not 64. Crash Team Racing was way better than Mario Kart 64.
Yeah, but Mario Kart in general, just like over its span of time, is better than any of the other racers, really.
Well, not Diddy Kong Racing.
Get fucked. You're just all about Diddy Kong.
Diddy Kong Racing is much better than Mario Kart. It is.
1999, you had Soul Reaver came out, Siphon Filter came out, Driver came out, Silent Hill, Spyro 2, Ape Escape, Resident Evil 3, if you were into that one, Tony Hawk's Pro Skater.
Ooh, yeah, I really feel like PlayStation. I mean, PlayStation was already coming into its own in 97, but like 98, 99.
Chrono Cross, GTA 2. Fuck. I spent an entire summer playing that shit, pretending I wasn't playing that shit. So every time
pretending you weren't playing it.
Yeah, because I wasn't allowed to have that shit. I was 11. And then I got I think, when did the London one come out?
Oh yeah, the London missions or whatever. Oh yeah. God, I don't know. It was in the store I worked at.
Yeah. Anyway, Dino Crisis came out in 99. Dude, was 99 the greatest year of it? No,
it's 98.
98 was pretty friggin' good.
98 is absolutely the great. Well, 98 and 2017 are the 2 greatest years in video gaming.
All right, I'm done perusing because I'm just gonna keep going back through games. But yeah, PlayStation 1, I was such a little Sony fanboy. Those CD towers? This is the best thing about PlayStation 1 games. You could get just regular CD jewel cases of them, and they fit in those CD towers, so your game collection didn't take an entire fucking bookshelf. You just had one single tower.
Interestingly enough, in 95, going all the way back there, they used to have those large jewel case PlayStation 1 games.
Ugh.
And those large jewel cases, Sony used to actually have to pay Sega because they actually had the patent on the large jewel case boxes. And the reason they did that was because it stood out more. Like they thought it was better for marketing to have a game in a big box on the shelf that took up a lot of space. And this became a nightmare later on when I worked in a store that sold PC games, where over half the store was PC games because of how big the boxes were, and they accounted for like 10% of the sales.
Ugh.
Like we sold vast majority PlayStation, and like it was kind of like it was like 55 PlayStation and then like 40 40 N64 and then 5% like PC, or it was like 50% PlayStation, 40% N64, 10% PC.
Yeah, I think something that was interesting about PC gaming at the time, because we never really did it. We had like we had little things, like Myst, I think was a big one. But like even the box for Myst was fucking huge.
Yes.
But PC games, it seemed like the whole idea was that you were going to get one game, and so you had this big friggin' box to like tell everyone you had a game. I don't know. I remember seeing a Myst box that had the highest cutting edge in gaming technology. It was the big thing on the front of the box. Like it, when they have like that marketing from blah 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 magazine and it says this is the highest end cutting edge technology, and they were talking about Myst. Like, ain't
Yeah.
that some shit?
Yeah, it's just an FMV game. Wow, that's so weird. Metacritic actually doesn't count unpopular game systems in its review aggregate. That's so dumb. Yeah, just going on Metacritic, I was just looking at 98, where it was like, here's the list of games in 98: Ocarina of Time, Tekken 3, Half-Life, Gran Turismo, Metal Gear Solid, Grim Fandango, Banjo-Kazooie, Thief, Baldur's Gate, Crash 3, Resident Evil 2, Einhander, Railroad Tycoon 2, cares of shit, StarCraft, Myth 2, Shogo Mobile Armored, what the fuck is that? Oddworld Abe's Exodus, Tenchu, Fallout 2, Turok 2, Falcon 4.0,
Oh,
Rainbow
Turok
6,
2.
F-Zero X, Rainbow Six, Star Wars Rogue Squadron, Xenogears, Wipeout 64, Dead or Alive, huh? Space Station Silicon Valley, Final Fantasy Tactics, Brave Fantasy Musashi, Parasite Eve. I can't believe Castlevania 64 is listed, but it is. Tomb Raider 3. And it goes on and on and on. Mystical Ninja starring Goemon, yada yada. But that's like, it's missing all the Saturn stuff like Shining Force 3, Panzer Dragoon Saga. What was the other one? Well, there was House of the Dead, but yeah, like, so many good games came out. Yeah, Burning Rangers, Street Fighter Alpha 3. Oh, fuck, there's so many good. So many.
What was the
good.
best Mega Drive game in 1995, and why is it All Real Monsters? Oh, they had a Gargoyles game in 95.
They did. That game's hard as balls, though.
Yeah, nobody played it, so I guess you're the only one who knows. This is it's sort of crazy to me that they had such a failure, I guess, right before one of the greatest 3 or 4 year runs of games. The games that came out in 95 must have sucked nuts.
Oh, they did. They really did. On PlayStation, they were not good.
Absolutely garbage.
Honestly,
Air combat.
it's and then I've heard
Warcraft 2 came out in 1995 on PlayStation 1. I wonder how it ran. I didn't get it on PlayStation, obviously. Like, why would you play an RTS on a console, I guess?
Yeah, I'm looking at all this unreleased crap.
Dark Seed 2. What the fuck was Dark Seed? Psychological horror point and click. David Cage was making games in 1995? I didn't even know.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm looking at like the Saturn's launch stuff. Yeah. Because honestly, like when you look at like 95 and you look at like what PlayStation had versus what Saturn had, it's kind of shocking that PlayStation did end up winding up like such a victor. Because like out the gate, it was a poor port, but it was still a decent port of Daytona. Panzer Dragoon, Virtua Fighter 1, and then you had Virtua Fighter Remix, Shinobi Legends, Dark Legend. Yeah, Virtua Fighter Remix, SimCity 2000. Yeah, it kind of blows my mind a little bit, just a little bit. Uh, Sega Rally Championship came out in November. Virtua Cop, like it's weird to me almost that that Saturn had the problems it did. December '95 was VF2. Get the fuck out of here. No way. I don't believe that at all. Release 90. Get the fuck out.
Oh, you know what? I think Time Crisis 2 had a PS2 version.
I did.
Yeah, so that's why I'm thinking of the orange gun cons, because we had Time Crisis 2 and Vampire Knight. We bought them.
Yeah, I mean, well, that actually makes a lot of sense. But yeah, it does shock me a little bit that with the with the number of games that came out in '95 for Saturn, it kind of shocks me that PlayStation did just take off. But it also kind of shows you what the power of Final Fantasy VII really did for that console.
You think it's Final Fantasy VII that solidified it, not like Metal Gear Solid or?
I think, well, yeah, because Metal Gear Solid didn't come out until October '98. I think there's a couple of factors that looking back to okay, so how did PlayStation pull ahead of the Saturn when Saturn? If you go by 1995 standards, Saturn clearly had a much better lineup of games than the PlayStation. But how did the PlayStation pull ahead? And I think a couple of big things are, one is Sony got competitive with the pricing. They standardized their pricing down to every game releases at $50.
Brilliant move.
And then I think another big thing was the fact that, by the time you got Crash Bandicoot rolling around, it was kind of becoming obvious that PlayStation just had a better 3D processor, or at least an easier one to work with. So people were starting to pump out better looking 3D games on the PlayStation than the Saturn was able to pump out. And secondly, and I think this is really true. I don't. It's a little anecdotal, but there were a lot of people like me who were waiting for that big 3D Sonic game on the Saturn that never came. That because Sonic is what the Genesis was around for a couple years before Sonic came out, and then when Sonic came out, that's when the Genesis blew up. And
I guess maybe it's blasphemy to say this, but I don't think I've ever really given a shit about Sonic.
Yeah, and there are plenty of Sega fans who like Max in particular. He doesn't really give a shit about Sonic. He loves old Sega games. So Saturn for him was fantastic. Loved the Saturn. He couldn't give less of a shit that there wasn't a big Sonic game on it. But Sonic was a big deal. He was a big moneymaker. So it's I think there were a lot of people like me who were kind of just waiting for that big Sonic game that never happened on the Saturn. So yeah,
So I guess to finish off the episode, the question for listeners is, if you weren't just come, if you were alive and kicking in '95,
yeah,
what was I kind of want to know, what was the game that got you to go after a PlayStation?
Yeah, what was the game? Do you remember '95? The malaise of it, because the thing is, I got a Super NES super late in the Super NES's life because we were poor and it took a long time to get around it. And I do remember when we did get it, and it was a big deal. We were having a really good time for a good number of years after we got the Super NES. But it was also, looking back at it, that was also short lived. Because again, I got the Super NES so late that I had started to save up money already for an N64. Just a couple years later, right? So,
well, I didn't get
it was an interesting time because I wasn't aware of what was going on financially at all with these companies. But I absolutely do remember the big 3D craze. I remember being drunk on 3D graphics, and the Kool-Aid of all that. And and I do remember the magical first time controlling Mario 64 and holding the controller wrong. And I remember all that. I remember that stuff, but Yeah, it's really interesting to me to like look back at this time and go like, yeah, the 16-bit era, it really did kind of end with a thud at the
Well,
end of it. Like the last years of Genesis and Super NES was very much just like a thud, right? Where this generation refuses to end, right? Like we're a couple years in to next gen on PS5 and Xbox, and we're still mostly playing PS4 games that run better. Like this, because of the way scalability works now, we've like last gen has bled so far into next gen. There's almost no difference between the gens almost anymore. And like 16-bit, it just kind of like it just ran out
tied
of
up.
gas and imploded. It feels like.
Well, I mean, technically, the Genesis was around until what, 97?
Yeah.
It hung around until 97, so it was 88 to 97. I didn't get one until 93, 94, even.
Mhm.
I got it for a Christmas, I think. And I was young. Like it was like a holy shit type gift.
Yeah.
Um, and technically it was for both of us, but I guess PlayStation 1 was kind of the first console I picked. You know what I mean? Like
Mm.
where you're like,
I
"Oh,
want
that's
that.
the yeah," where I was old enough to kind of like know that I wanted
Mhm.
that type thing.
Well,
Um
again, and there were so many consoles in the mid '90s, that were just trying to compete for airspace and shit.
well,
And
yeah, so in hindsight, I didn't realize how little I remembered about those happening concurrently.
yeah, like I remember in '93, I remember this very specifically when like the Jaguar was coming out, and everyone was kind of like
Why
mystified by this
though?
thing,
Yeah.
because of 64 bits. What does that look like? And it didn't look like she looked like shit. Uh, but yeah,
Well,
there was that, and there was 3DO, which was like it's a $700 game. Oh my god, what does it do? Does it come with
nothing.
nothing? Does it come with a fleshlight? Like,
They do now. They would. The first company that figures out how to make that handheld.
see, yeah, there's your PS5 attachment there. Get that dual sense, that HD rumble really going on there.
I would finally have a reason to play one of those like visual novel games, you
Oh
know?
my god.
Because for the story, obviously for the story, but also the blowjobs. Um, on that note, we've got producers to thank.
If only they allowed AO games on consoles. Like you could imagine some of those indie hentai game developers in
Fuck,
Japan just chomping at the bit, being like, "Fuck."
chomping at the ball gag.
Ooh.
Ooh. Uh, so our producers for this episode are The Arnett, Scrunami, Top 35, Hyper Viper 89, Ziggy Z, and Online Persona. Thank you, dudes, and we will catch you next time.